Thank you. Love you too. Quick show of hands. Raise your hand if SEO is not your primary job responsibility. Perfect. You've come to the right place. Everyone else who's in the title, I don't know what to tell you. No, everyone's welcome here. But so let's talk for a second. The non-SEO's guide to the power of search behavior. We're going to start off talking about search, or we're not going to start off talking about search. We'll get to that in a second. First, we're going to look at survey data. Now, I understand that not everyone likes pouring through data. So if you're not into crunching numbers, I tweaked the next part of this just a little bit so that everyone could be intrigued. Problem solved. There are approximately 121 million men in America, at least 18 years old. According to one of the most authoritative sources on American behavior, the General Social Survey reports that heterosexual men have sex 63 times a year on average, using a condom 23% of the time. And if you forgot your calculator, that means they should go through between 1.5 and 1.7 billion condoms a year. But there are two sides to every story. Women in that age range outnumber men by about 7 million. Heterosexual women have sex 55 times a year, using a condom 16% of the time, which nets out between 1 and 1.1 billion condoms. If you're following along, these two numbers on the right should match. So my question to you is, who's lying? What do you think? It turns out they both are, like big time. According to Nielsen, only 600 million condoms are sold per year, and that includes all orientations and all ages. So that anecdote and a few others featured in this presentation come from a book called Everybody Lies by Seth Stephens-Davidowitz. I highly recommend it if you are interested at all in big data or human psychology. But the title is ironically pretty truthful. We all lie, don't we? According to University of Massachusetts psychologist Robert S. Feldman concluded in his research, 60% of people lie at least once in a 10-minute conversation, which means I'm probably going to lie to you a couple more times today. Sorry about that. But why do we lie? There are probably a lot of factors at play, but a lot of it boils down to incentive, which is really driven by the subject matter and the setting. If I ask you all what your favorite season of the year is, I think you would pretty much all give me a pretty honest answer. It's a pretty harmless question in almost any setting, but what if I asked you if you've ever been jealous of a coworker's success? Now we're kind of getting a little bit more sensitive, and suddenly how I ask you and who's in the room may dictate your likelihood of lying. But what does lying have to do with search behavior or any other type of market research technique? I'm glad you asked. So when we're evaluating which market research techniques to inform our marketing decisions, I think we usually look at these three criteria the most. How measurable is it? Does it provide the right context? Do we know what those measurements mean? And is it cost effective? But what about accuracy? Should that not be held to the same rigor? Now, I already picked on surveys once, but I'm not quite done. Because I know some of you are thinking from my earlier example, well, of course, Tyler, uber-sensitive subjects like condom usage, they're going to elicit some false answers, but my business or my brand's about blank, and we don't have to deal with that. Well, it turns out that surveys that allow you to paint yourself in any sort of favorable light can fall victim to false reporting. It's due to something called social desirability bias. You want to know what that means? It means lying on surveys. People lie on surveys so much, they had to create an official name for it. Seriously, just look it up. If you're still a skeptic, I have another example for you. Recently, University of Maryland graduates were polled, and one of the questions they were asked is if they graduated with lower than a 2.5 GPA. 11% fell into this category. Fewer than 2% admitted to it in an anonymous survey. So how do surveys measure up in our measuring stick? Well, they're highly measurable. I also rated them well contextually because you control the questions and answers, so you have a lot of influence on your ability to interpret them. We talked about accuracy. Even online anonymous surveys can get some false answers. And depending on the type and the scale, they can be fairly economic. So my 100% unbiased, entirely scientific score is 10 out of 16. So let's move on to another one. With focus groups, I don't think there's as much of a misconception about their potential for inaccuracy. I think we know we're making a trade-off. We're trading statistical validity, this certainty that who we're talking to is a valid representative sample of a larger audience, for deep, rich, qualitative insights. And those qualitative insights we may not be able to find otherwise, but they do come at a price, and they come at a price of measurability. It's hard to find those insights on a spreadsheet, and the more we do, the more we lose that context that we're craving. So that knocks focus groups down to 8 points. Let's look at the other end of the spectrum. There have been countless studies that have tried to reduce our complex and nuanced thoughts into a single number. Pupil dilations, reaction times to words, skin responses to pictures. Those are just a few examples. We've even found ways to display our thoughts into 3D visualizations, which is mind-blowing. No, mind mapping, yeah. So while it's highly measurable and completely accurate, it's like, what is it being accurate about? That's the problem. We haven't been able to find out what exactly, or agree what exactly it means. And depending on how sophisticated it is, it could cost an arm and a leg. So the other end of the spectrum nets a similar score. What about social media? Many suggest social media is the new focus group. It's oftentimes cheaper, there's more data, it's immediate, and it still gives you some of those qualitative insights we're looking for with focus groups. But what about accuracy? The Atlantic and National Enquirer, two publications that have very little in common in terms of content, actually sell a similar number of copies per circulation. The Enquirer is a weekly, Atlantic's a monthly, so the Enquirer sells a little bit more in total volume. Google search data reinforces their similar popularity with a near one-to-one relationship. But what about Facebook likes? Also one-to-one. I'm totally joking. 27-to-1 in favor of the Atlantic. Are we lying about how much we like the Atlantic, or conveniently forgetting to like the National Enquirer? Probably a little bit of both. But raise your hand if this surprises you. Please don't raise your hand. Seriously. We actually make memes of how social media is just a distorted view of reality. Me after drinking one local beer and telling everyone about it. How people flex on Instagram, and what it's like in real life. Okay, you can raise your hand now. Has anyone seen this woman? She's awesome. She mocks celebrity photos by showing what it looks like if a regular person does the exact same thing. So here's her wearing a revealing picture of herself on a t-shirt. Here's her, I don't even need to tell you what this is. Yeah, you can just watch it. Here she's copying Beyonce, but showing what motherhood more closely resembles. It's funny, but there's also an unsettling truth about it. We're not always who we say we are on social media. So I didn't give it any love in the accuracy category, but even with its drawbacks, social media is is given one of the highest scores, at least by me in my completely scientific score. As I said earlier, incentive is really what propels us to lie. With surveys, we're not really incentivized to lie, but not really to tell the truth either. With focus groups, our incentive to lie grows because we want to avoid those face-to-face judgments. And similarly, we crave admiration, even if it's from a complete stranger. Well, as we get into social media, that incentive to lie grows even more because, or at least to embellish the good parts of our life and downplay the bad or mundane, because it influences how we're seen by our peers. But what about search? Not really an incentive to lie. There's actually a very powerful incentive to tell the truth. Think about it. The more honest you are with Google, the more likely you are to get exactly what you want. And that dynamic is what makes search behavior one of the most transparent reflections of our reality. In the last 3 elections, according to Stevens Davidowitz, it wasn't registration rates, early voting movement, or the polls that most accurately predicted voter turnout in various regions. It was Google searches. Searches for vote, where to vote, how to vote, were all stronger predictors. In the last election, many attribute Trump's win not from more of his base coming out to vote than expected, but less of Hillary's. The polls famously got this wrong. If you were looking in the right place, Google got it right. Predicting voter turnout is one thing, but what about predicting the next president? Could Google search do that? Well, due to a statistically significant relationship found in the 2012 election, Stevens Davidowitz correctly suggested Trump would be the next president just 3 weeks before Election Day in 2016. It wasn't searches for Trump or searches for Clinton. A search for a candidate doesn't really tell us much about how someone feels about them. It's actually searches with both candidates in the same query. But how could a search for both candidates point to the favorability of one? Whoever's listed first. So a search for Trump versus Clinton would be more likely searched from a Trump supporter. Clinton-Trump debate would be more likely searched by someone who favors Clinton. And at least in the last 2 elections, the order was a strong predictor of favorability or affinity. I wonder if any of that translates to any of your brands when searches include a competitor. So because it's highly measurable, fairly easy to understand, incredibly accurate and economic, search behavior leads the way with 12 out of 16, but 75% is far from perfect. So what's holding search behavior back? What are some of its biggest drawbacks? First is context. To be able to understand a search, you need to be able to answer 2 questions with a reasonable amount of confidence. What's the kind of person searching for this, and what are they looking for? Well, some searches are downright ambiguous. Take a look at this search for doors on March 9th. You've got shopping results for doors, just general door information, some news results about the Interior Secretary's $139,000 door upgrade. Yikes. And some information about the rock band from the 60s and 70s. So even Google, the all-knowing, all-powerful Google, is like, I'm going to hedge my bets. Just like, how about all the doors? You know, good luck. Take your pick. And sometimes we have real-world data to help kind of back up or support or make sense of it all, like the order of the candidate searches, but sometimes we're left guessing. There's also this combination of dimensionality and confirmation bias. It's not exclusive to search, but I think is amplified by it. We've all heard the saying, even a broken clock is right twice a day. That's a very rudimentary kind of picture of dimensionality. When we're dealing with lots and lots of data, we're going to have random things that correlate by mere chance. Confirmation bias is simply our tendency to interpret data in favor of what we already hoped or believed. I really love this tweet by Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey. Analytics are used much like a drunk uses a lamppost for support, not illumination, which is so true. So if we come to a situation where we have a tendency for confirmation bias and a data set that makes dimensionality more likely, we're at risk for some real research, or real misleading research here. There's also the penchant for the repugnant. What do I mean by that? If social media is where we overemphasize the good in our lives, it's reasonable to assume search is where the unsavory is more likely to take place. And that can be highly shameful, like being attracted to your sister, or the slightly embarrassing, like questioning your decision to put a rug on your carpet, which I did not know was worth second guessing, and now I need to like do a little check at home. I don't know. The final main drawback from search behavior is one that is in complete control by all of you and me. And it's ultimately the reason I'm talking to you today. We often only use search behavior to inform our SEO and PPC decisions. When I search what is keyword research in Google, this Wikipedia page is the #1 result. Let me save you some reading. Keyword research is a practice to achieve better rankings in search engines. And even though I see this all the time, when I stop and think about it, this is exactly how I feel. Are you kidding me? Using keyword research just for SEO is like using duct tape just to fix a leak. Yeah, I mean, it's a great use case, you should, but there's so many more applications. Like duct tape, it's used for everything, like human fashion, cat fashion, parenting, you know, all the big ones. Maybe it's the name. Maybe keyword research makes you think of endless rows of data on a spreadsheet that Matt was talking about in the last presentation. Or weird people who talk about self-referential canonical tags. I wonder if we should rebrand it today. What do you think? In the book Everybody Lies, the author often describes keyword research as a digital truth serum. Now that's cool, but we may only get one chance at this, so I feel like we got to get it right. Let's keep thinking. Aggregated mind reading? I think I could get on board with that. I still don't know if that's it, though. Like, I feel like we'll know it when we feel it, you know? I've got it. Bitcoin, huh? Who's ready now? Now, no matter what you want to call it, I hope you're starting to understand the unique value search behavior brings to the table. We started with the why, let's jump into the how. Over the rest of this presentation, we're going to go over 2 things. One is a quick tutorial on how to do keyword research, and 2 are practical ways to apply that research to various parts of your business and marketing decisions. Now, let me first say that if you're serious about this, have an SEO professional do the research. There's nothing I can say in the next several minutes that's going to make you as effective as someone who does this on a daily basis. But, you know, when we don't have the capacity or the resources or the time, it's good to have basic skills to do quick directional research. I'm only going to share tools that are free or freemium and only give you tips that can be executed without SEO experience. We're going to use a fictional company for this, and I purposely chose a field that I knew almost nothing about. My wife leads all landscaping projects at home, so. All right, well, let's help Gordy with some keyword research and learn along the way. The first rule of keywords is don't start with keywords. If there's going to be one step that you're going to have a leg up on other traditional SEOs, it's this one. Too often, SEOs go straight for a keyword research tool without slowing down and stopping and looking at the competitors, the product, most importantly, the customer, and everything in between. I have a confession. You remember earlier when I threw like surveys and focus groups and social media under the bus? I actually kind of like all of them. Hear me out. As long as we're not solely relying on one source and we are aware of the blind spots, we can use multiple sources to spot trends and corroborate insights. So just initial research that we did, and let me just say, if you're an in-house marketer, maybe you've gone through this exercise and you don't need to do this all the time, but if you're an agency managing multiple clients, I would never want to skip this step. So just from our initial research, we found out a few things. We know people looking for landscaping providers often have some, kind of not so beautiful areas that they want remedied or covered up. They have more of a functional concern of drainage and flooding when it comes to landscaping. They want that right mix of sunlight, shade, and water. And then there's the whole ordeal with Fido's bowel movements, like does he go in one spot? How do we limit the smell? Now, if you didn't already notice or figure this out, I didn't actually conduct real focus groups or surveys for this fictional company. That would just be mean. But what I did do is I used this tool called keywordit.com. What it does is it gives you the most commonly searched or commonly used phrases or keywords within subreddits on Reddit. So it's not always a home run, but it can be really helpful at times. So definitely check it out. All right, number 2, find out what's already paying the bills. The next part, what you want to do is find the queries Google already associates with your brand. Think about it. If Google's job is to give you exactly what you're looking for, shouldn't we pay close attention to the keywords it already finds us relevant for? A great place to start is Google Search Console. It's free. It used to be called Google Webmaster Tools for anybody who's been in the field for a while. It should already be set up on your site. Just simply log in, click on your domain, and then search analytics, and you can download tons of keyword data. And it doesn't just give you rankings. It gives you keywords that are actually generating real visits to your site. Another great resource is on-site search data. So like I said earlier, we're kind of making assumptions whenever we're interpreting keyword data of who is searching it and what they're looking for. But we never know for sure due to the anonymity. However, when someone is on your site, they're infinitely more likely to be your target audience than some random person on Google. So even though the volume can be much lower, if you have on-site search functionality, mine this data to look for great opportunities and insights. And then we're going to wrap this step up by looking at where we're already ranking, as well as our competitors. Moz Keyword Explorer is a great tool here, especially if you're not wanting to pay anything. So it gives you 10 queries a month for free. And it doesn't limit the number of results it gives you per query. All right, so we've got our original research, and now we've built on that with our current performance. They're not all going to be winners, but it's best not to be too choosy here. And that's going to go into step 3, where we're actually going to be building more robust lists. I'm going to cover some of the best keyword generation tools out there. First, we're going to stick with Moz Keyword Explorer. It's the exact same tool I just told you about. One search, in this case for backyard landscaping, gives me 1,000 keyword ideas, which is great. I can also toggle between various things like various filters like keywords or questions, or keywords based on closely related topics to come up with some good ideas. Just this one search allowed me to find and cluster lots of different themes. And some things were a little obvious, like people are really interested in DIY. They want something simple, easy, executable. But some things were not so obvious, at least for me. Like there's a lot of specific search interest around abnormal yard types, like sloped or hilly or small. Another tool you can look at is keywordfinder.com, especially when you run out of Moz credits. It gives you 5 queries per day, unlike the 10 queries per month for Moz. But unlike Moz, it does limit the number of results it'll give you per query for the free version. Before I go over to the next tool, I want to make sure you know what I mean when I say Google Suggest. This is what you see under what you're typing before you press enter. And besides filtering out for some inappropriate phrases, it's mostly generated by search volume. So, so what you see right below what you're typing is the most commonly searched phrase that includes what you've already typed. And when I showed this to my wife, she was not surprised. So, like the name implies, Infinite Suggest doesn't have any limits on the number of results it'll give you. It connects with the Google Suggest API, and it pretends that you typed in your root word plus A, plus B, plus C, and pulls all those suggestions down. And then what you can do is click on any one of these suggestions and run that through the exact same process. So here we can quickly see that clay soil is a hot button topic when it comes to lawn drainage. Answer the Public is similar to Infinite Suggest in that it uses the Google Suggest API, but it also has this older bald guy, so there's that. No, it also, not only does it have that alphabetical suggestion, so partial shade A, partial shade B, it includes some common preposition, comparison, and question modifiers. So like, can partial shade blank, partial shade versus blank, and gives you some great ideas there. Another thing I like about it is that it uses the Keywords Everywhere Chrome extension. So all these volume estimates come from this free Chrome extension called Keywords Everywhere. Download it today, for sure. All right, Google Trends, I think most people have heard of this, but if you haven't, get on board. It'll show you relative search interest over time for a term or topic. It'll also give you relative regional interest and give you some search suggestions. So here it's easy to see that sod installation generally peaks around late April or early May, and has a relatively strong search interest in Kansas. All right, if you've heard of the tool Google Correlate, please raise your hand. Okay, if you've used the tool, please keep your hand up. Perfect, okay, that's kind of what I was thinking. If I didn't believe you, I was going to remind you what this whole presentation is about, but you passed the test. Google Correlate uses Google Trends data, and it, like the name implies, it finds the highest correlative trends. So if I search custom landscaping, it's unsurprising that outdoor patio cushions, hardscape, and dirt delivery have some of the most similar search patterns. But what you can also do is offset the time frame. So you could ask, what's the highest correlative terms but 3 weeks earlier? Same search term, custom landscaping, and all of a sudden we see baseball and softball terms. Huh. Now it's important to understand correlation and causation are not the same thing, and this doesn't even mean that the same people search them. But what is interesting is year after year, just before custom landscaping hits its peak, people have baseball and softball in their minds. All right, so we should have an intimidating list of keywords at this point. It's now time to make sense of it. So let's start grouping them and categorizing them. This is a very basic example of what you can do. Put in your keywords, your volume. I like to have broad categories and subcategories to drill down a little bit more. And then it's nice to have a place where you can pinpoint where they are in the funnel or in the customer journey. This is going to help you make sense of those endless rows of data. When we're evaluating keyword research, which keyword research keywords to use for SEO, we generally look at these three criteria: volume, relevance, and difficulty. But difficulty really hinges on what the space you're trying to compete in, and since today's conversation is about everything other than SEO, we're going to ignore this one. Oh, there we go. For volume, I like Ahrefs and Moz. The reason I like them is they don't just take in Google data, which is flawed. They also take in clickstream data, real recordings of searches. At this point, depending on your keyword list size, you may have to fork over some money or get a free trial. So I kind of fibbed earlier. That's one of my lies. This does cost a little bit. In terms of relevance, the best place to query is your brain. If you've done all this upfront research, it should be pretty intuitive most of the time whether the keyword is right for your audience or not. But when it's not, when it's a little unclear, go to Google and search it. Take a look at those results. The closer those results seem to be talking to the audience that you're intending to talk to about the thing you're intending to talk about, the more likely it's a relevant term. But make sure you're logged out of Google, you're searching privately, so Google's not tailoring its results to your search activity. And if you want to search from a different location and mimic those results, you can use isearchfrom.com. All right, we've done two things. We've talked about the unique value that search behavior brings to the table compared to other market research techniques. We've also gone over a quick tutorial on how to do keyword research. A little time check. I got 4 minutes. I'm going to go over 10 ways to use search data for anything but SEO. Okay, this isn't going to be an exhaustive list, and it's going to vary by industry, but I want to make sure you know how to use this keyword research to apply to other things. All right, number 1, job postings. Gordy was underwhelmed by the quality of candidates he was receiving for his landscaper job. He was hoping for someone with professional experience, but instead got people with, part-time lawn mowing experience. However, when he was doing some research, he noticed a stark contrast in the search results for landscaper jobs and landscape architect jobs, and wondered what that might mean about the people searching them. On the left, you see questions about what landscaping even is, and what does a landscaper do? And it even has a salary range that's a little bit lower than he was expecting to pay. On the right, you have a larger salary range, and you have some listings like the Bureau of Labor Statistics that may indicate a more educated audience. A name's not everything, but just that simple change could positively impact the quality of candidates he receives. Number 2, customer service. Pretend Gordy asked his office manager for the most common questions and objections received. And then he can cross-reference them to the themes that really bubbled up during keyword research. A lot of those are going to overlap, but there's going to be some unique ones here and there. The ones uniquely in the search behavior column are going to be those that customers either routinely forget to or maybe don't feel comfortable bringing up on the phone. If the office manager starts incorporating those into the conversation, it could lead to higher customer satisfaction and more upsells. At the same time, some of the things that are uniquely in the right-hand column could be better explained on the website to meet those customer needs sooner. 3, campaign development. Gordy couldn't help but acknowledge the prevalence of DIY searches when it came to landscaping. And while he knew that's an inevitability, he wanted to find that in-between, between DIY and Gordy doing it all, because it would open his customer pool a little bit. So that's when he came up with DIMY, do it mostly yourself, where he could do some initial consultation with customers and set them up for success to take it from there. And then if they got hung up later, or if they were doing a more complex project later, they'd be more likely to come to him. Number 4, media buying. I can't stress enough how important Google search results are. If he finds out that small backyard landscaping ideas is a relevant term, he should be mining those results for advertising opportunities. This is a really smart way for paid and organic to work together. 5, brand name. Gordy's ground covers was in the lead, but it wasn't a finalized decision on his name. So what he did is he started searching his brand name. Nothing showed up. But then he searched some predictably related terms, like Gordy's landscaping Overland Park. And he actually found a Gordon's landscaping in the same neighborhood. So he decided to go in a different direction. Find your niche. How many landscaping companies are there in the area? And what makes any of them stand out? Maybe it makes sense to corner a small part of the market rather than fight for scraps among all of it. Gordy saw this underserved audience in uneven yard landscaping because of the search interest he saw, and he was able to go after that there. 7, relationship marketing. This one's easy. Find when landscaping is at its peak every year, and then time your emails and SMS messages appropriately to target your customers at the right time. 8, affiliate relationships. Gordy could tell there was a big overlap between landscaping and foundation repair when it came to water drainage, because a lot of times those solutions are pretty significant. And while Gordy wasn't equipped to do some of those heavy-duty solutions, he couldn't help but notice that link between landscaping and water drainage. So he partnered with a foundation repair company to be a cross-source referral for customers. 9, smarter targeting. So remember earlier, and I know I've got about 30 seconds maybe, smarter targeting. So we know that baseball and softball correlates just a little bit before with custom landscaping. Assuming Gordy was, shoot, I'm going slower and I should be going faster. Assuming Gordy is a residential and commercial landscaping company, he can target baseball and softball fields to actually get in front of his B2C customers in a clever way. I'm going to skip this last one. Come talk to me afterwards. And this is just a recap slide. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.